Hi, this is LGW, Living God's Way. Thank you for joining us. My name is Mpo. Today, I would like us to touch on a very important subject. I made mention of this in passing, though, in our second video at the beginning of the channel. I spoke about Dan Brown and the book that he wrote, The Da Vinci Code. I made mention of the Council of Nicaea. I believe that when that book came out and when that information came out, there was a lot of misinformation that led to believers and people who are not believers in believing a certain way, in seeing the faith in a certain way. Now, I would like to talk about what he made mention of, and rightfully so. I mean, it's an historical fact that there was a man by the name of Constantine who was a Roman emperor, right? Who did call the Council of Nicaea. But what people have been informed about that is misinformation. And to be honest, it is basic lies. Now, before we can even talk about the Council of Nicaea, let's rather talk a little about who Constantine was. Constantine was the emperor prior to the council being called in AD 325. He became he was already an emperor before he converted into Christianity, which was in 312 AD. Now, what led to his conversion was there was a battle called the Battle of the Bridge of the Milvian Bridge, where Constantine said he saw a light. When he saw that light, he saw a cross. There were words written just next to or below the cross, yeah, where these words were written. These words said, "By this sign you shall conquer." This is prior to the battle of the Milvian Bridge. Now, it's reported that the same night of him receiving the vision, he had a dream where Jesus Christ came to him. Christ gave him a sign. He showed him a sign, a cross that he would use in that battle. Now, there's two symbols that Christ showed him to use just before the battle, and those two words are that made up the symbol that of the cross that he used for that battle. Those words are Kai and Ro. In short, is the word Cairo. Now, he had all of his soldiers' shields marked with that sign of those two words that made up a sign and a cross. That's what he attributed his victory to. And this is when Constantine converted into Christianity. This was in 312 AD. The following year, in 313 AD, he and his co-emperor by the name of Licinius, they came up with an edict called the Milan Edict, where they, both of them, made Christianity legal. Now, please bear in mind, I said they made it legal, not the religion for the Roman emperor. That would later happen in 380 AD. So when Constantine, because we were given a notion that Constantine made Christianity the main religion or the main faith of the Roman Empire. That's not the case. He only made it legal after his conversion, and that with his co-emperor, who was not born again, by the way. He was a pagan, but because because Constantine spoke to him, he was convicted. They came up with that edict where Christianity became legal, and the persecution stopped because of that. Are there advantages to Constantine making Christianity legal? Yes, there were. Here's some of them. This was when Christianity began to rise. It began to rise as the main religion in the Roman Empire. Like I said, that only happened decades later in 380 AD. Constantine was no longer an emperor by then. He had passed. And he also built temples. He financed the church in that regard. He also called the Council of Nicaea. So the church did benefit from having an emperor becoming a believer, converting into Christianity. This is what Paul was after in his ministry, even though it happened years after Paul had passed. It proved that having a emperor as a believer would actually benefit not only Christianity but the whole world, because when they legalized Christianity and it eventually became the legal faith of the Roman Empire, this is what gave rise to the Western world as we know it. If there was no Christianity, the West as we know it would have been stuck in its ways, because that's what paganism does for any given nation. Africa is not the only one. Neither was Europe. Europe was not the exception. They rose as a continent because of Christianity. So I just wanted to touch on that. In our next video, we will talk about the Council of Nicaea, as to the reasons why the council was called, and as to what actually happened, what transpired at the council, not this hogwash that we've been given. Thank you for joining us. May God bless you in all of your endeavors. Join us next time on LGW as we'll be touching on these matters. Bye.